Hey Jordan, Jared here. Thank you so much for your weekly reflection last Friday. Good stuff. I want to start with an observation. It sounds like Thursday, February 20th is a good day for you. It's a great day for me. And so if that works, just shoot me a time that would be most appropriate for me to come to Lincoln High School and spend a period with you in one of your classes. If Thursday doesn't work, then Friday is also fairly open for me. I do teach from 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock that day, but that's about all I have as far as like standing meetings on campus. So either of those days would be great. I'd love to get in and kind of see you in action a little bit here. As far as your reflections go, I think lengthwise you're doing all right. What might be helpful is you give me quite a bit of the demographic breakdown here, and this is a challenging group just by nature of all of the accommodations. Even if many of the students have the same types of accommodations or modifications, just dealing with some of those behaviors makes it challenging. But in weeks to come, if you were able to give me more specific examples of areas of challenge or areas you'd like to see some improvement upon or areas of success, those I'd encourage you to include those in your reflections as well. Just anything you can do to help give me a real understanding of what's happening in your classrooms. And I'll get an opportunity to visit one of those on Thursday, hopefully. Don't feel like you have to invite me into one that is going to perform better than the others. I take all that into consideration, right? I kind of want to know the context I'm dealing with, but I also want to know the context that you're dealing with on a daily basis. And so some of the suggestions that I might offer to you might not fit based on the makeup of these two survey of chemistry classes, but we will see. We will see. You talk a little bit about conferences. And I do appreciate the insight that you give. You mentioned that you often see students as part of a whole, part of a group, part of a class, and that when they come with their parents or when just their parents show up or their guardians, that forces you kind of out of that way of thinking and to be able to see them as individuals. And I think that's powerful. And I think that's exactly the sort of thing that USF hopes to get out of these reflections. The ability for you to kind of break out of paradigms of thinking that you normally do and just expand that a little bit and think about how or why you operate the way that you do with your students. When it comes to conferences and it comes to parent communication in general, I used to view conferences as that great opportunity to meet with all my students' guardians, and then we could become a team, right? And we could build that stool with three legs. Because you do need three legs in order to make the stool stand. And so teachers in the school are one of those legs. Students obviously are a second leg there. They have to be a part in their education. And parents would be the third leg. And so you create this tripod that you need all three of those constituents kind of on the same page. But the reality of conferences, at least what I found, is that I would often see the parents I didn't really need to see, whose students seem to be doing well intellectually, socially, emotionally, all the above, checking all the boxes, just doing great. And then the parents that I would really desperately want to see and have a conversation with would be the ones that I wouldn't see. And so one of the options, I'm going to pause this just for a second while I take a phone call. All right, I'm back. Sorry. We were talking about conferences, and we were talking about, or I was talking rather, how my view kind of switched when I recognized that conferences can be powerful if parents are there and if parents want to join you in that partnership. But that's not always the case. And so you had asked about other ways to maybe help with attendance or maybe ways to help with, I think more specifically you were talking about students and the amount of late work that was piling up. And what I found, especially when I was at Lincoln and I had 120 to 140 students a day, is that I needed to be more explicit and more organized in the way I went about that. And you're probably recognizing that as well, that you maybe came into teaching high school assuming students are just going to naturally kind of take care of their own business if they're late or whatever. And what you're finding out now is that's not necessarily the case. And so one thing that I would share with you, I was able to pull this up. This is something that I did. One of our assistant principals at Lincoln encouraged this. And what I blacked out over here were just names of students and then phone numbers. And you can see that this started early on in September. And each week what I did is I just pulled a grade report. And I would pull this on, I forget, was it a Thursday? Was it a Friday? When would I can't remember when exactly I gave students grade reports and all that kind of thing, but I wanted to hold students accountable to work that they were missing. And I wanted to give them an opportunity to come in and get that work taken care of. And if they didn't, then I wanted them to know that I would be contacting their folks at home. And so sometimes this is easier than other times, but you can see this first week, I had, I don't know, a dozen or so students, and I tried by emailing at first. If I wasn't able to, as weeks progressed, well, a couple of things. First, you can see that more students I'm typing out more information about more students as the weeks progress, because the chances of students being absent or not getting work handed in as more and more assignments are accumulating is greater as you work into the quarter. And then what I would do is I just had a couple of different columns. One was the communication. So, I emailed this parent, I called this parent, I didn't get an answer, I left a message, and then at some point I kind of figured out like an abbreviation system. But then I also typed out what is the assignment, and then what was the result. And so you can see, well, these students in yellow here, and then it turns into green. These students, I got a hold of their folks, I talked to them, and then they were able to get that work done. And then as we move forward, you can see, okay, well, here we go. I've got kind of these three colors. Green is done, yellow is that it's in progress, red or pink is that, well, they still have quite a bit of work to do. But I was able to just kind of take down some notes about when they were absent, any specifics about the assignments. You can see this student has been absent quite a bit, and they're missing basically everything. And and this is just a way for me to, then later on, I guess I added the grade, their percentage, so we can track that. What this did, and your system might look very different than this, but what this did is it required me to actually reach out to parents. And as intimidating as those phone calls can be the first couple of times, what I found the majority of the time is that when parents recognized that a teacher was reaching out because they cared about their student, and not just to say, hey, they're failing, but I have a plan for how they cannot be failing. I just need your help in encouraging them to stay after school or come in before school or whatever the case is. The majority of parents were very receptive to that. And so I put this on the students, and it was their responsibility to come in and to find a time. But when they didn't, then I just held them accountable by emailing home, by calling home. Some parents prefer text. There's a way you can do that from your cell phone, but it doesn't actually give them your cell phone. And if you want to talk about any of these things, by all means, let's do that. But I just thought that would be one example of a way that you could arrange this. So anyways, let me know about Thursday, and I'll talk to you soon, Jordan. Thanks.